counselor by trade, and I served for 5 years at Gateway Church in South Lake, Texas, as a pastor in marriage and family, and oversaw a lot of crisis marriages. So started an affair recovery program, wrote a marriage program that I taught for 4 years. Started groups for people who had experienced any kind of trauma in their lives, because I found that trauma interferes with having a good marriage, makes marriage harder than it needs to be. And so I've always done a lot of trauma work because I'm also a sex therapist. And so I became a sex therapist because my office, when I just started practicing as a regular therapist, my office started filling up with people who had experienced a lot of sexual trauma. So at the end of one day, after seeing, I think I had seen 8 clients that day, and all of them had had sexual trauma, which I know that's unusual. So after they left, I sat on my couch and I'm like, Lord, what is going on here? Is this something like we're gonna do? You know, right? Do you ever ask God that? Like, God, is this gonna be a thing? You know? And I felt like the Lord was like, yes, this is gonna be a thing. And I'm like, okay, well, if it's gonna be a thing, I want more training, right? And so, you know, I just didn't want to do harm to people, right? I wanted to try to actually help people. And you know, when you're working with trauma, sometimes it can just feel a little overwhelming, even if you are trained. You know, it's just like, Holy Spirit, help me, you know, and help this person. And so that's when I went and got a certification as a sex therapist. So, and then when I was then Gateway asked if I'd come on staff, so I did. And so that's why I started lots of things for people with trauma. I started men's groups for men struggling with porn addiction and other sexual behaviors, and started groups for their wives. And so yeah, that's what I did. And then I kind of felt this prompting, like it was time for me to go explore other parts of my life. And I was turning 60, so this was about 2.5 years ago. And I'm like, you know, my feet are tired of standing in high heels and speaking for hours, so I need to go do something else, right? So I went back into private practice and became a leadership coach with Dr. John Townsend. Wow. So I have a leadership group of women in New York City, and then I have 2 groups in my home where we meet monthly all day for 1 time a month for every day, every month for a year. Sorry. Whoa, there we go. Just couldn't get that out. Gee, I don't know if that's jet lag or what that was. But anyway, yes. So that's what I do now. And then I wrote this book. Good. So you know, it's been my heart to write a book. And I had to personally recover from I had experienced some sexual trauma growing up. And I remember thinking, there's gotta be a better way to do this. You know, this is just so hard. And so a publisher asked if I would write a book on sexuality. Wow. And so in this book, there's men's groups, there's a women's group, and we talk about everything. And there's no taboo topics, because I think the church needs to do a whole lot better job, right? Like, we're all sexual creatures, whether we want to admit that or not. We're born sexual creatures, and we're going to die one. Your 95-year-old grandma's still a sexual creature, right? I know. I'm like, ooh, wow, creepy. Yeah, and so, you know, it's just it's a part of how God made us. And so, kind of part of my mission is like, let's just de-shame that, and recognize that people have a lot of sexual issues, and so let's try to help them instead of shame them or embarrass them or make it harder for them because we can't talk about it, right? Yeah. So this book just kind of talks about it, and it's been really cool. Like, my pastor texted me and said, I'm on a flight. I can't go any further. I read the chapter 4, and I've got to talk to you before I can read anymore because I'm wrecked. So he'd experienced some sexual abuse growing up, and he just needed to process that. And I'm like, isn't that great? You know, where now it's okay to say, hey, this happened to me, and I need to talk about it. So that's why I wrote the book.
Yes.
I just had a quick question.
Yeah.
I'm sure I'm not the only one thinking this. How do you define sexual trauma?
Yeah. Well, you know, it
Did everyone hear the question? How do you define sexual trauma?
Okay, how do you define that? You know, for me, it really varies per person. Like, for some, like they experience some unwanted touch growing up, and it has just stayed with them, and it traumatized them. And it was really scary and frightening, and they just need help working through that. So it can be, you know, it can be a huge range from unwanted touch to, you know, a rape or sexual harassment. I think whenever we don't feel safe or we feel threatened and we don't feel like we have a way of escape, you know, where we feel like we've lost our own agency, you know, our own power, that can very easily traumatize our brains. Right? And thankfully, you know, God has created these amazing brains of ours to heal and recover. But we can't do it alone. And when we bring any of our pain into community, that's why I'm such a believer in groups. Like, let's get into groups, but let's learn how to be a safe person in a group for other people, right? Where we aren't telling them what to do and how to do it. But we're more like, tell me about your story and how can I attune to you? How can I have compassion for you and empathize with you and make it safe for you to tell your story, right?
Yeah.
Like, honestly, I think as leaders, that's one of the best things we do.
Yeah.
Right? So, thank you.
I'd already asked Nancy at the same time as I asked if she could come now to come back and do a specific seminar on this subject because we need time. So you've got 2 different groups you meet with and then us. So we'll get you back. Do it like that. I think that would be essential, and we will include our menfolk and take our time because I'm listening to like how it's so like lovely and gracious, and so no one ever know that you're like full of so much wisdom, or not wisdom, but that's a very significant thing that God called you to do. That is, I couldn't imagine giving my life to that. So thank you, because somebody had to. So as a pastor, having the resource that is you and your resource is essential because, you know, it doesn't matter, church is community and people go through all sorts of things. So thank you. Amazing.
Well, it's interesting because there's been times where I wanted to go, really, I want to break from this because this is really hard work. Right? And God, I'm going to try to kind of run away from this for a while. But even in my TLP groups where I have high functioning leaders.
TLP?
Yeah, Townsend Leadership Groups, and I lead 3 of those. Even in those groups where I have high functioning leaders, on our first day together, I have them do a life walk. And it's so interesting how most of them will end up telling us about some sort of sexual event that has been harming towards them. So I'm like, okay, Lord, here, you know, I can't run away from it, so here it is, you know, give me the grace to do this work. But it's awesome, because I love it, because I get to watch people heal and get redeemed and start becoming sexually healthy and relationally healthy, because, you know, we're not sexual creatures in a vacuum. It affects all of our relationships. It affects our relationship with ourselves, right? And so when I get to see people like, oh, they're getting their self-esteem back, they're getting their voice back, oh, they're learning to love their bodies, oh, they're learning, if they're married, they're learning how to share their body, right? And that's all really fun and redemptive.
Yeah, I love that, because otherwise it's just a very like hot topic, can of worms, but the strategies to move forward, that's what is everything. So yay. Okay, so I've got a leadership question. Thinking about, we are a lot of people here in this room, a lot of these girls are actually this is the war room, right, for conference.
Yeah.
The warriors who are carrying and serving, and which is why I wanted to do this brunch, so that they could have time to just sit and glean from you. Martha and Mary in the Bible, it's a very significant story because we have Marthas in the room, we have Marys in the room, and this is now where, when I say Marthas, there's a lot of people who are serving in like many different roles. So it's not a negative thing. It's like you're standing in the kitchen, you're cooking, you're doing everything, and then Mary walks in and just sits by Jesus, which is what we all really want to do. But it's like, it's a luxury because somebody's got to do the work, right, folks? Somebody's actually got to set up. Somebody did this, and when I say somebody, like a massive team put everything together, the behind the scenes. Can you help us just maybe with a strategy that would help kick out of our life anything that would make us be super strivers under pressure? Because I know as a pastor, having done this many years, all it takes is a conference to watch people melt. And I would love if you could help us, just like a strategy to be strong and stay strong, even under pressure.
Yeah, right? How do we do that? I love the story of Martha and Mary, and I think God separated these two women out to show us that actually we need to integrate both of them.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right? Like, we need to integrate the Mary part of us where we spend time at the feet of Jesus and time doing self-care and paying attention to ourselves and being aware of what our needs are. So I think that's really big. And then there's time where we are women of action, right? And we have missions and we have visions and we have purpose and we need to go out and rock the world, right? So I think we're meant to integrate both of these women into our lives. I think some of the best maybe advice I could give to you in working with people is to make sure you stay in your own hula hoop. Right? And notice.
I love your visual. Australia, didn't anyone just see somebody like hula hooping?
Yeah.
See, you're awesome.
Right? Because here's what we do. We get into somebody else's hula hoop. And then we want to fix them and control them, and we're disappointed when they don't shape up, measure up, clean up, get it together, right? And so when we get our foot back out of their hula hoop and get into our own, and go, really, I only have power over me. And I'm really only responsible for me. And how am I doing with my own self-regulation? How am I doing with my own self-leadership? How am I leading myself? Am I behaving in ways where I'm proud of me and I like me? Or am I losing it? Am I melting under pressure? I can tell when I've got my foot in somebody else's hula hoop, because you start feeling stressed out. You feel liable, you feel responsible. You start taking care of them instead of giving care to them.
Wow.
Which is such a huge difference. There's a huge difference there. I hope I'm here and I want to give care to you, right? But I know I can't take care of you. We take care of infants because somebody has to. But as soon as they're able to start making some of their own decisions, we start saying to our children, hey, do you want peanut butter and jelly or do you want grilled cheese? Do you want to wear your cowboy boots or are you going to wear your flip-flops today? You know what I mean, right?
Yeah.
You start helping them use their own brains. Because here's my belief about people. They don't need me to ever tell them what to do. Because people have what they need inside of them. If I will maybe help them dig for some of that wisdom, right? So I do that by asking good questions, not by telling people what to do. Because then I start owning their lives, and that is awful. Right? Have any of you done that and you can feel it and you're like, oh, I just feel so heavy and burnt out and like I just want to go and take a nap and I'm exhausted and oh, people, you know, right? Right? So that typically means we have our foot or maybe our whole body in somebody else's hula hoop and we need to get it out. Right? And start asking ourselves, okay, how can I be healthy in this relationship? Because I've crossed that line where I'm not being healthy right now. And maybe I'm trying to give everybody what I actually need from me. Right? Like sometimes we will just be projecting what we need onto somebody else. And women, we have to understand that we have a bigger worry and fear center in our brains than men do. And so we can get worried and we can start projecting what we actually need onto others. And then like, man, we start obsessing about our teenage kid. You know, instead of stopping and going, okay, what's going on with me? Why am I obsessing about this kid? Or obsessing over this person? Or obsessing, what's going on with me? Am I projecting my needs onto them? You know, like, have you ever noticed with mothers, like, I think you're cold, you need a coat. And the kid's like, I'm not cold. Like, I think you're hungry, you need food. And they're like,
Ella Wilson, short finger down. I am not a helicopter parent. I call friends and ask them occasionally if I am being one, and they agree with me that I'm not.
Bella's like, what? Yes, Mom. So, but do you know what I mean? We women can do so much. We can get our worry center going, and then we project that worry onto others, and then we start taking care of everybody. When really we need some self-care, or we need to call a friend and say, hey, I need some comfort. Like or I need acceptance. Do you accept me? I'm feeling really stressed out. Do you accept me? That I feel like kind of like a basket case right now?
Wow.
You know, my brain's all over the place. Could you just contain me? I need containment. Do you know what that means? Do you know what containment means? Can you kind of picture like when your 2-year-old's on the floor throwing a fit, and you go over and you go, shh, baby, it's gonna be okay. And you pick them up, you hold them, and you know, you're kind of, it's gonna be all right. Mommy's here. Sometimes we need that. Sometimes we need to call our friend and say, hey, I had a fight with my husband and my kid's acting out. I'm not doing well. Could you contain me? Right? So, somebody raise their hand. Yes.
I was going to ask, like, what are some of those questions that we should ask ourselves when we're feeling like we're in that place where we're starting to worry too much or obsess too much? I mean, I feel guilty of that. I have 2 kids, you know, you feel that. So, you know, it's good, some of those, like, introspective questions. You know, what is it that we're looking for? Because sometimes we don't really know.
Oh, that's so good. I love that you asked that question because I try to practice this with myself. And now that my kids are my kids are in their 30s and 40s, and so I obsess way less about my children. But I've learned to attune to myself and like, okay, now this is gonna sound really, really shallow, right? So are you ready for this?
Oh yeah.
But like, I know when I'm kind of having some anxiety, because like I'll obsess about like my hair. Isn't that weird? Or like what I'm gonna wear. Do any of you do that? Can you relate? And I'm like, okay, stop. Your hair's fine. Whatever you wear, who cares? So what's really going on with you? And I'm like, oh, I'm kind of feeling anxious. Okay, well let's stop and let's self-attune. So I went to a neuroscience. I love neuroscience, and like 20 years ago, I'm too old now, but when I was younger, I'm like, oh man, if I could have gotten a degree in neuroscience, that would have rocked my world. But we really weren't studying the female brain 20 years ago, right? At all. And so now neuroscience is giving us ways to calm ourselves. And so it was so funny. I went to this neuroscience conference and all these brainiacs, and I think these brainiacs were kind of embarrassed that after 20 years of research, this is how we can calm and rewire our brains. is first you locate where you're feeling it on your body. So I just stop and like, oh, my tummy's kind of like turning circles. Or, oh, my heart's kind of pounding, you know? And so I'll stop and locate it. And I'm serious about this, okay? It's so simple, but isn't God so cool?
Yes.
Right? Because he made this simple, not like you have to be a brainiac to figure this out. You can just stop and locate on your body where you're feeling the tension. I do this with clients all day long.
Wow.
I'm like, where are you feeling that? They're like, what do you mean? I'm like, where on your body are you feeling this? And they're like, well, I kind of feel like I'm choking. And I'm like, okay, good. Can you describe that to me? And they're like, yeah, it feels really tight. It feels like I've got somebody's hand around my neck. It feels really hot. Okay, good. Right? And then the next step, you locate, you describe, and then you label. And I'm like, what are you, what word, what emotional word would you give that? I feel scared. I feel fearful. Okay. And then sometimes we'll do some deep breathing. And then I'll just check back in and like, okay, so where was your fear and anxiety when we started? And they'll say, oh, like an 8. Like, where is it now? Oh, I feel pretty calm. Like it's a 4. Right? So I do that with myself all the time. And depending on what's going on, sometimes I might have to do it 2-3 times a day. Sometimes I might do it once a week. But, you know, I think one of the best things leaders can do is self-care and attune to what's going on with you so you can bring your best self to relationships, not your worst self. Right?
Yeah, very good. Wow. Thank you. So some of our girls here are married with kids, some are not. So could you talk to all the single ladies about this season that, well, here's a Bible story. There's a woman in the Bible, her name is Abigail. She's married to a man whose name means fool. And he ends up dying and she ends up marrying King David because he messed with the wrong thing. How do you, like, help our single girls not marry a fool?
You know,
We like that one.
yeah, that's good. So there's things to look for, women, right? Like, it's funny because Reno, who's been so sweet to drive me around, we've been having these great conversations. And you know, whenever I am, you know, some people have the gift of singleness. And if you have that gift, right? If you have that gift, you rock that gift. Because the Apostle Paul said, that's preferable. Because marriage is going to take a lot of time, a lot of work. Right? So I always ask my single friends, so do you want to be married, or do you like, or are you know, do you have this amazing gift that you can just go rock? You know, and if they say, well, I want to be married, then I'm like, oh, okay, well, let's talk about why you're not, right? I'm sorry, is that just rude? I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
Say it.
Right? And you know, like, there's usually some reasons. Like, there's some things that happened in childhood, maybe. You know, or maybe there's a fear of getting too close, right? And so I think we always like kind of, and maybe it's just not the right time. You know, it can be anything from, there's some things we probably need maybe a little help working through, and it can be like, hey, I'm just in a really good place and I'm loving being single, and I'm like, yeah, then rock the place you're in, right? Like, nobody says you have to get married, right? Nobody says you have to get married. And I think we in the body of Christ need to really just like, let's be the body so that being married isn't the only way to have community. Like, let's love each other, let's hug each other, let's make sure we're singles, that you're getting lots and lots and lots of hugs, you know, because we're body creatures. And I think a lot of sexual acting out is because we need more love and hugs and affection. Right? Like the Apostle Paul said, you know, we greet, wasn't it him? Talked about, you know, holy kisses, right? Like really super affectionate. And I'm like, you know, we'd probably all be sexually healthier if we were more affectionate. If we didn't sexualize all our needs. Because we live in a super hyper-sexualized culture. And yeah, we have huge needs for just affection and warmth and nurturing. Everybody has those needs, right? So let's give more of that in the body of Christ, where we're hugging and affectionate, we're warm and we're nurturing each other, and we aren't doing life alone. Because you can be married and really lonely. You can be married and so lonely, you know. So that's why we've got to put community and connection around us, right? But you know, if you really I have two guys in one of my Townsend leadership groups who are both single. They're both probably 32, 35. And I'm like, that's awesome. Do you guys want to be married? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, okay, well, let's talk about why you're not. And so one of them, his family, they became missionaries and went to China when he was really young. And would come back for like 3 weeks every summer. And he got to connect with American girls that he felt really attracted to. But then they leave again. And he kind of learned it's just me and my family. And it's me and my family against the world. And he was still carrying that attitude around at 32. I'm like, dude, it's hard to get married when it's you and your family against the world. Right? Like, you know, like you're so attached to your family that you aren't feeling your aloneness to have your own woman. Right? We kind of gotta feel our longings and tune in to what our longings are, and our longings are awesome. Without our longings, we'd never move towards what we want, right? And so then I get really annoying and say, how many, you know, if it's a single guy, I'm like, how many females have your phone number? How many girls are you dating this week? Right? And they're like, well, I've been praying. And I'm like, you know, that's great, but I want you to. I'm like, but I think we've over-spiritualized all of this. And I'm like, go date. Like, is there anybody you know that you could ask out for coffee this week? That's so good. And he's like, well, I guess I could. I'm like, okay, ask her out to go have coffee. Like, don't sexualize it. Don't have sex with her, because then it gets really serious, right? I mean, I'm serious, because biochemically what happens when you have sex with somebody is a female releases all this oxytocin, which is the bonding hormone. It's a hormone we release when we have a baby, and we smell the top of that baby's head, and we're attached. I'm serious. Babies release dopamine through the top of their head, so mommy, that's why all we women, we want to smell the top of the baby's head. We're not goofy. It's because we get this oxytocin hit, and we're like, oh, happy drugs. and why we love these babies. Well, when a female goes skin to skin with a man, she releases huge amounts of oxytocin. And you're going to be attached to whomever you have an orgasm with for the next 3 weeks at least, even if he's beating you. That's why women stay in bad relationships. Because chemically, they are bonded, right? And their head may be going, this is dangerous, I need to get out. Or this guy is not good for me. But because she's being sexual with him, or even just hugging him, her chemicals are telling her to stay. So, you know, that's why I'm like, keep it really casual and start going to coffee with people. Drive your own car there, and if he or she's a jerk, then say, hey, that was fun. I gotta go meet some people to play volleyball. I mean, I gotta go shampoo my hair. I don't care. Just leave, you know, right? You leave. I think we women can be so agreeable that we keep ourselves in situations that we don't want to be in. Even on a date. Like, it's like, you can pretty much tell, like, in 15, 20 minutes if there's some, some hope, or if this isn't good, but because we're so socialized to be so acceptable and agreeable, we'll do things we really know in our hearts. And so I'm like, tune into you and going, something isn't right here. Because honestly, this beautiful part of the female brain, you have great intuition. Listen to your gut. Right? Listen to your own gut.
Thank you. Wow. So what would be some things to look for? Because cute is awesome.
I forgot that part.
Cute,
right?
cute gets
Yes.
Yeah.
Cute is awesome, and I believe that there needs to be physical sexual attraction. I don't think we should over spiritualize that. I just think God gave us attraction so that we would make babies together and keep the human species alive. You know what I mean, right? But look for things like, how does he treat others? I always say to men, watch out for borderline females, and females watch out for narcissistic males, right?
What does borderline mean?
Well, it means that there's a history of very combustible relationships, and has a really hard time being in relationship with others, and can get pretty combative, and is very deeply shame-based. So if I were even to say, hey, Diana, is this ready for tomorrow or something, that shame would take over and say, you're attacking me, you don't like me, you don't, very, very difficult, right? And so females, you have to watch out for narcissistic males. Just saying.
Explain.
A narcissistic male is someone who basically, really, the underlying issue is deep-seated shame. But it looks like, I am deeply in love with me, and you were born to meet my needs. Because after all, I'm pretty fabulous, so of course you would want to meet all of my needs. And I believe that there is meeting in love relationships. It is about meeting needs, but this is different. This is, you are so lucky you're dating me and you get to meet my needs. Right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And it's really a hard person to make a marriage with, because basically they want you to be a non-person, because it's about them. And so let me just put in a little tagline here. We all have a little bit of narcissism, and a little bit of narcissism is actually healthy, because then we take care of ourselves and we care about ourselves. And so, do you hear what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But it's an extreme form of that. And so you always look at, how do they do relationships? How are they doing at work? Do they get along with others? Can they work with others? How are their relationships with their family of origin? Just kind of basic things, right? Really make friends with their friends. What kind of friend is this person? Right? Get to know their parents or their family. Like, how are they as a child? Have they always acted out a lot? Nobody in their family can stand them, and you know what I mean? So, is that helpful at all?
Yes,
Okay.
Very, thank you. Okay, so this might be, we'll see where we go. But you take your time in answering, because it's really, you just, please keep talking. So for some women, well, men as well, they're stuck because they don't know what to do with their life, because where it is right now is not where they want to be. How do you help people move forward with like a career change, or going back to school, or doing something that would help not just be stuck?
Yeah.
What do you?
Yeah. Well, in my own life, I got married at 18. I have four sons. I had our first one at 19. Had our last one at 27. And I, for me, because I've grown up with quite a bit of trauma, so at 6, I knew that what I wanted was to get married and to have my own family. And so when I got into my mid-30s and started doing some of my own recovery work, kind of when I was coming more, that was settling more, then I'm like, oh my gosh, now what do I want to do with me when I grow up? Because now I kind of feel like I am grown up, but what do I want to do with me? And so, we have to feel our misery, right? Because I remember just agonizing over that, like, what am I going to do with me? And those misery questions, like, well, what's it cost me if I don't do something about this? What's it going to cost me? And so, in my late 30s, I decided I'm going to get my bachelor's degree. And then when I was done with that, I'm going to get my master's degree. And I want to have a career. And I think there are missions for me to fulfill in my life. And I'm just going to try to take one step at a time. And I love how looking back over my life, like God says, He puts us on His path of righteousness if we will let Him. Right? And that's not easy to be on that pathway. But I look way back, like in my late 20s, I worked for Dale Carnegie training. And I'm like, I still thank God for that training. It was awesome. And I've used that so much over and over and over in my life. And then I youth pastored, which is then when God started speaking to me about, okay, it's great to help these kids, but the family needs a lot of help. And so that's when I'm like, okay, I'm gonna get my bachelor's degree. And then I'm like, oh, I think I want to become a therapist. Oh, so that's when I got my master's degree. And then when my office filled out for sexually pro, oh, I need to get more training, And then, oh, now I love leadership. Oh, I want to become a leadership coach, right? So, just giving yourself permission to pursue some of the things that are making you feel uncomfortable and miserable, and going, what needs to happen for me to go to that place?
So you must have been like super confident and super brainy.
Well, I don't know about that. I think I have absolutely struggled with confidence. I feel way more confident now than I used to feel. And so I would just have to I'm just gonna press through my total lack of confidence. I have no confidence I can even do any of this. I don't even know. But I'm gonna stop obsessing about that and just kind of put my next foot in front of my other foot, right? And take my obsession off. Can I do this? Am I smart enough? Am I capable? Am I able? Can I write a book? And I'm like, I don't know if I can write a book. So I would just put my music in my ears and get my computer and pray and start writing. Because the only way to write a book is just sit down and write a book.
Yeah, you're right. That's so right.
And thinking about it, honestly, is a waste of time. Right? Like, I know we have to think about things for a certain amount of time. But after a while, we have to realize, I can spend my life thinking and never doing. And so I actually have to just stop thinking and start doing. So when I had lupus. I was diagnosed with lupus in 2005. And it was a 3-year healing journey. And one of the things I did was go to Bikram yoga so I could detox my body. And, you sweat, like, gross, disgusting. But it's a great way to detox. And they would say in there, because, it's 90 minutes of 105 degrees and you want to die and you want to leave, right? You want to run out of the room. Sometimes you kind of go into flight and just like, get me out of here. I hate this. Sometimes people lay in the back row and cry. Like, let me out, And then it's like, just lay on your mat and stay there. And they're crying. So anyway, but I remember them saying, stop thinking and just do the move. And I started implementing that into all of my life. Stop thinking and just do the next move. And I'm telling you, that was, other than detoxing my body, and 3 years later, my body was totally healed, and I was lupus free, but stop thinking and just make the next move. And it's okay if you fall on your face. It's okay if you fail. because most really successful people fail frequently.
Yeah.
And so stop being your own worst critical judge. We are so hard on ourselves. Give yourself permission to fail, to mess it up, to fall on your face, because you are strong and resilient, and you'll just get back up, dust yourself off, and you'll go again. Right?
Awesome. I'm so glad I asked you that question, because I had a feeling that it wasn't sheer confidence at all. So thank you. Got to look at confident people and go, I don't have that.
No.
But no. See the steps. So I think this is the last question for now, because we're going to refresh you and can't wait for tomorrow. So conference is tonight and tomorrow. We've got Erin Gruel here tonight, which is really, really cool. And then Nancy's doing 2 sessions tomorrow. If we are not yet convinced of why we should help any women in our world come, what would you say? Give us some tools, or give us some words, some verbiage that would help us help a woman who does not know what they need, so that we can actually close the deal. Because a lot of our girls have been, inviting, and some people, because they don't know, leave it to the last minute. So help us help our girls close the deal.
So this is what I think we women do. I don't know, and help me if I'm wrong, because I could be wrong, right? But I think we look at other women and go, oh, well, she's got it all together, right? Do any of you do that? Where we judge each other based on our outside, instead of seeing our insides, where all of us need way more connection than we have.
Yeah.
All of us need to know that women are for us, not judging us.
Right.
Because a lot of us have been hurt by other women and feel like women are just judgmental and critical and competitive or whatever their experience has been, and to invite them into a safe community where they're going to experience love and support and connection is such a gift to any and every woman, and something that we all need. And so I would just encourage you, don't look on the outside and feel like, oh, I can tell what's going on with this person, but realize that, man, people are hurting in really deep and significant ways.
Yeah.
And, they need Jesus even if they don't know that they need Jesus. And they need the love of the body of Christ more than they know that they need the love of the body of Christ, right? I grew up in a non-Christian home, and man, I remember hiding under my covers and saying, God, if you're alive, I want to know you, because nobody had told me about Jesus. And I'm like, wow, we have the treasures of life, and so many people don't. Right? So, I pray that the Lord would just lay anybody on your heart, and you would just call them and say, hey, just thinking about you. Would so love for you to come with me to this thing. And, right? So.
Yeah, and apart from the fact that they're going to hear you, which is
Oh.
and the stress epidemic, and
Yeah.
I'm just looking forward to the conversations we've had.
Mm.
And I mentioned to you earlier that I've shared so many, the skyline illustration. Do you remember me mentioning the skyline and the wrecking ball and the fire, and that was a conversation that we'd had, and then the trauma brain, all that stuff. So looking forward to you sharing from you instead of by me, because you'll get it right and I'll probably get it
Well,
right.
I don't know if I'll get it all right, but I will do my best, right? Yeah, because I've had to recover I had a trauma brain. When I started therapy, my therapist said, I think you have PTSD. And we didn't know a whole lot about that back then, so I've had to work a lot on my brain and get a lot of help, right? I certainly have not done this alone. God has so graciously put other people around me, and I've had to learn how to ask for help. And I keep help around me, right? I keep support around me, because I know my brain could go wonky if I didn't, so.
Okay, so we'll finish now, but can you just give us a couple of book titles that you would recommend, that just on anything we've talked about today, whether it's, you know, marrying the right guy, whether it's leadership, whether, you know, anything.
Yeah.
So Henry Cloud wrote a great book on dating, and I would recommend reading that. I think it's like How to Find a Date Worth Keeping, I think is the title of that. It's a great dating book. Understanding Our Brain, I love the book called The Body Keeps a Score. You know, I think that was kind of like, I felt like my body was the last part to heal because my body was keeping score of all the trauma.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. And we didn't have enough research back then to know how trauma goes into the cells of your body and refigures your DNA and your cellular structure, right? So, yeah, so I love those two books. I hope...
Are they both by Henry Cloud?
No, the other one is by Dr., and it's like a German name, Van Biesel,
We'll find it.
but it's The Body Keeps a Score. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. All right, well, why don't we thank Nancy?
Wow.